Hey everyone, welcome. This is a webinar on tax planning while you're working and when you retire. So, before I get started, just a few disclosures that I want to get out of the way. This is a completely educational webinar. If you're working with an advisor, please consult them before doing anything different with your plan. And also, I am a certified financial planner, but uh, if you are looking for help, please go consult with a planner or a certified professional to help you with some of these things that we're going to talk about. All right, now that that's out of the way, what we're going to cover is uh, tax planning this year and for years going on for the rest of your life. When we look at tax planning, we're looking at minimizing your tax liability and utilizing as much of the tax breaks available to lower your tax exposure. So, many ways to do this, but the things you want to start evaluating are things like the timing of your income, especially if you're self employed, uh, when certain income comes to you in certain years can change things as well, especially if you work a seasonal job or something like that. But besides that, you want to look at also things like the selection of your investments, the type of investment accounts, which we'll talk a lot about, the current tax law, which there was just an extension of the Tax and Jobs Act. We'll get into a little bit there. But what I want you to walk away knowing is a little bit more about how to reduce your taxes through retirement investing, and then also look at ways to reduce your taxable income. And we'll look at some of the ways you can set up tax advantage vehicles to provide income in retirement. Finally, we'll touch on Social Security benefits and maximizing those with a couple different strategies. So, reducing tax liability with your retirement savings takes a little bit of planning. So, when you're in your working years, you're in your accumulation phase and you're saving, stacking away money. This is when people hear about things like dollar cost averaging, buying a little bit into your 401k plan or IRA, or there's a number of self employed plans for those types of folks. But overall, we're looking at putting away as much money to fund our retirement. Now, for this year, we're in 2026. The 401k plan is still something that you can put a ton of money into. And if you're over the age of 50, you can also put up to 26,000. So that's a lot of money that can get stacked away. Now, when we look at this new landscape that has occurred, relatively, I was really asked about taxes before 2017. Once we start to get a bunch of different tax changes, every couple of years, it's made it top and front center of a lot of the conversations. So I want you to keep this number in mind. 57% of Americans rarely consider the taxes they will pay in retirement or are paying in retirement. So why is this a big deal? Well, this can be a huge mistake. I personally worked with people who, just by maneuvering certain tax levers, have been able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases, even more than that. So let's take a look at the different sources of retirement income so we can learn how to manage them a bit. First, everyone knows Social Security. It's basically an annuity that everyone gets puts money into, and then they get a part of. A lot of talk about that. Will that continue after 2033 or not? That remains to be seen. But Social Security is part of the mandatory part of the budget. So currently it is required by law that it is funded. So there's lots of planning you can do later on as well if benefits drop after 2033, which there's been a lot of talk about. But who knows if that happens? All you can do is kind of plan different scenarios for that. Next, you have your 401ks and IRAs. These are basically cousins, very similar types of accounts. 401ks at work have higher contribution limits, while IRAs offer the same type of tax deduction benefit, tax-free growth on the money, but you also get taxed at your ordinary income tax rate on the way out. So those two are very similar. Then you have your Roth IRAs. So Roth IRAs were created in the 80s as a way for people to pay tax today or in the year that they're putting into their account and let that money grow tax-free for the rest of their lives so that they never have to pay tax on it again. Why those are neat? Well, that's going to lead to some flexibility in your plan and things in case tax rates go up. or you have large expenses in retirement at a certain point. It could be long-term care, could be buying a new house, could be a cruise on in a river in Europe, right? So uh, when we look at the next part, pensions, a lot of federal employees or teachers, firefighters, uh, a lot of these types of jobs have pensions. And when we look at a pension, they, they tend to be a lot more popular back in the day. A lot of companies have decided to take the risk off themselves and put it more onto the investors. So that's why you see 401k is a lot more popular now. But pension payments are taxable income for you. So that is another income stream for some people. And then finally, you have taxable investment accounts. So we'll talk about joint brokerage, things of that, and trust accounts as a way for people to kind of put money into an account and not be taxed as much as, as a 401k and IRA, which we'll talk a little bit about. All right. So when you're looking at your taxes this year, think about where you are in your tax bracket. Can you fund some of these accounts to get under certain thresholds? Can there be some maneuvering to help you out with lowering the amount of your Social Security income that is taxed? Well, you want to also think about things if you're on Medicare. If we can push under certain thresholds so that we see the IRMA surcharges or increased Medicare charges for people with higher income. If we can navigate those and cut those down, that's another benefit of using tax planning properly in retirement. Okay, so 401ks, IRAs, and pensions. If you look at your tax return, these all fall under the same category, essentially. So you have your 401ks, IRAs, and pensions all giving you taxable income for that year. And these are all, when you take your taxable income, you add them all up. These are things that are, when you look at your tax bracket and where you are, these are the things that put you into those tax brackets. It's this type of income. It's this ordinary income. Now, there are some cases where you can plan early and start to diversify so you don't have all your money in this. But if you're looking at your life later on, something to think about are required minimum distributions out of these accounts. So in your mid 70s, for some of you in your early 70s, you would have the government to tell you that you need to take out a certain amount of money from your IRA or 401k so that they can tax it. And even though you may not need all that money, that amount may be higher than what you need. And so that may push you into higher tax brackets unnecessarily. All right. Next, we have taxable investment accounts. So this could be a brokerage account or a joint account if you have a spouse. This could be a trust account if you created a trust. All of these types of accounts are the types where you'd put in money into it, and there's no limit in the amount you put into it, unlike the 401ks and IRAs, which have contribution limits. This, you can stock as much as you want into it. And with the taxable investment account, you're going to have the ability to use capital gains rates. So these capital gains rates are typically more favorable than the ordinary income tax rates. So when you buy into a taxable account, let's say you put in $100,000, your cost basis, or the amount that you purchase those securities with that $100,000, is your cost. And then you are taxed on the gains above that basis. So if it grows to $150,000 and you sell everything, you would pay capital gains rate on the $50,000 gain. So if it's less than a year, then that's 20%. And if it's more than a year, it's 15%. There are some circumstances where if you're in an extremely high income, that could push you to 20% as well. But if we look at some other areas like Social Security, you have something that's called tax deferred income. So when you have Social Security, you're thinking about it as an annuity, right? You pay money into it your whole life. And then once you hit your full retirement age, or the age that you want to start pulling from your Social Security, that's when it becomes annuitized, essentially. And so now you get to collect payments. Now, taking distributions from your tax deferred account, like an IRA or 401k, may allow you to then delay Social Security. You would have to do analysis to see based on your health, and maybe the health of your spouse, and kind of when you plan to retire, to see when it is best for you to pull Social Security. But an option to kind of bridge the gap, if you want to delay your Social Security, you can if your portfolio can support it, you can take from your 401k and IRA and delay the Social Security, as we'll talk about some of the benefits of doing that. But once we hit 70, in our mid 70s, we're going to start to get the RMDs, the required minimum distributions. And those are the things that I see most that push people into higher tax brackets on it that they were not planning for, or just, it just kicked out way more than they actually needed. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but that is an important reminder of how important managing those RMDs later on in life is. All right, if you're self-employed, there are some plans that work for you. So you have the SEP IRA, the Simple IRA, and then the traditional IRA. Now, starting with the SEP and Simple, those are very similar. But when you look at a SEP, you have a slightly higher contribution limits. So if you're using a SEP, you have up to 25% of your compensation, with capped at $57,000. Now, the Simple is when you're under 50, that's $13,500. And then also if you're above 50, that moves up to $16,500. But as you can see, the SEP gives a way more higher funding capability. And then the smallest funding capability, but also an option, is the traditional IRA. So a traditional IRA, or a Roth IRA for that matter, can give you the option of also funding that as well. All right, healthcare and education. So these two have some rare tax advantages that are rare for the IRS. So you have the education savings accounts, which you can put up to $2,000 per child. That goes up to $190,000 of income. And then you also have your health savings account, HSA. Now, those also have their limits, but the nice part about these is that you get a triple benefit. First, you get a deduction for funding those accounts. So especially your HSA, if you have a high deductible health insurance plan that has a HSA, you can put money into it, use that money, put pre-tax money that you haven't been taxed on, allow it to grow tax-free. And then when you need to use the money to pay for whatever your medical expense is, that is also tax-free. So when we look at these two options, these are ways to get a tax deduction, grow tax-free, and not be paid and not pay tax at all on the way out. So it's a triple benefit. Something incredibly useful, especially if you're coming close to certain thresholds of your income in the tax brackets. Okay. Next, now a strategy for managing your tax efficiency, especially helpful when you're later on in retirement, and you have probably more assets than you have earlier on. And one of the things I look at, and tons of planners look at, is your asset location. So what does that mean? So you have essentially three buckets. You have taxable accounts, you have tax deferred, like IRA, 401k, and then you have tax-free, like those Roths. Now, when we have those three buckets, we can decide to move certain investments into certain buckets. Now, let's break up the taxable accounts. Let's say we have a joint account with you and your spouse, and maybe a separate brokerage account for whatever reason. Those would be your two taxable accounts. And let's say you have a 401k and an IRA, or if you're self-employed, maybe a SEP. Now, we'll call those your tax-deferred accounts. Now, if you're holding certain investments are going to kick off certain tax events. For example, if you're holding stocks, if you're selling and buying stocks actively, you're going to create capital gains, if you're realizing gains, and that's going to run up your tax bill. Right? So if you're doing actively managed or trading stocks frequently, holding them less than a year, those types of investments you want to hold in a tax deferred account because you're not realizing all the gains, each time you're selling and buying. Next up, you'd want to put those stocks that you hold for a longer period of time, so let's say over a year, in your taxable accounts. Why? Well, those are holding long term. And if you have those in your taxable account and you do eventually sell it or rebalance or whatever needs to happen, or you need the money, you're taxed at your capital gains rate at a long-term capital gains rate, which is more favorable than the short-term. All right, let's look at some of the other options. Tax-exempt muni bonds. So the neat thing about muni bonds is that they're exempt from federal tax, right? So, and some of them are exempt from federal and state tax. Being here in Connecticut, there are a bunch that you can find. You can go on any of the custodian websites and look for muni bonds, and you'll see lots of them out there with no state tax and no federal tax. Takes a little bit of homework, but those types of investments obviously would make most sense in a taxable account where you can get the benefit of no tax, state or federal potential. Lastly, index funds. Now, index funds are funds that mirror an index. It could be the S&P 500, the NASDAQ. It could be the Dow. There's thousands of indices out there. Those are just some of the more popular ones that people know. But people can buy these funds, which is a basket of stocks, or it could be bonds. In these baskets or funds, these index funds, are pieces of all of these different securities, stocks, or bonds that it's holding. Now, why would those make sense in a taxable account? Well, I would argue that they would make sense in a tax-deferred account as well. And more so, index funds with high capital gains distributions, those are typically the funds with high turnover. Those ones would definitely want to go into a tax-deferred account. You'd have to do a little bit of homework on the funds you're holding and see which ones are hitting or pushing out large capital gains distributions, usually at the end of the year. But there's also dividends that come out as well. But those capital gains distributions, even if you held the fund the whole year, get kicked out to you. So if you're holding those in a tax-deferred account, you don't get hit like that. But if it is in a taxable account, having a low turnover index fund is typically favorable in that taxable account because the lower the turnover, the less capital gains distributions typically. Now, some of the things that you would hold more so in tax-deferred accounts, things like fixed income securities, because those bonds are going to be giving out a lot of, let's say, high interest bonds or corporate bonds that you're collecting interest on. That's going to be kicked out to you. So tax-deferred accounts will also help with that. Commodities, not a huge fan of looking at commodities as a big part of an investment, right? Because commodities are things like gold, silver. You can go. The list goes on and on. But when you're looking at commodities and even some alternatives, holding them in tax-deferred accounts will help also if you're doing a bunch of trading with those. That's up to the discretion and your strategy, but holding those as well as those active managing strategies like those active index funds, more so in the tax-deferred accounts, is also going to limit some of the tax exposure that you're seeing. Okay, next up, balancing income and taxes in retirement. So this is sequencing your withdrawals in retirement. So when you get to retirement age, you can start to take Social Security early at 62. You can get full benefits at your full retirement age, usually around 66, 67 for most folks. And then you can delay up to 70. Now, when you delay up to 70, each year past full retirement age, you're getting an 8% increase. So that's a guaranteed 8% by the government. And, guaranteed is the most expensive word in finance. But when it comes to Social Security, the government guarantees that 8% raise. So when doing analysis on when to pull Social Security, the option of delaying and using more of your IRA and 401k up front to fund your cash flows, while delaying your Social Security typically benefits people who are going to live later on in life if they expect to live well past their what's called their break-even age, the age where it makes sense to delay. Let's say your break-even age is around 80, 82, based on your benefits and your life expectancy. Let's say it's 82. What would happen then is if you live past 82, then it would make sense for you to have delayed. The big thing is no one knows when they're going to die. So there's lots of planning that you can do around this where there's different strategies depending on the age of you and your spouse, or if it's just you, depending on what you want to do, whether pull early, and if you don't need the money, you can invest it. There's the risk there that the investment could lose money over the years because of the stock market being down. But that is another option. And you also run the risk of spending it. If you take early and spend it and you plan to invest it, that's obviously going to go counter where you were planning for things to go. So something to think about as well. So what is the power of delaying Social Security? So we talked about if you're living later on, the benefit of delaying makes more sense for people because you get more monthly. Well, how does that pan out exactly? So if you look in the middle here, at the bottom, you'll have ages, your Social Security ages that you can pull from, 62 to 70. And what you'll find here right in the middle, full retirement age, let's say it's $2,000 for this person. You can see if they pulled early at 62 and got $1,500 a month, $1,500 a month from Social Security, that's a big drop from the full retirement age amount. That's $500 less a month. So when we're looking at delaying, what does that turn into eventually? Well, you can see a little over $2,600 a month, almost a $1,000 difference, a little bit over 8 years. But that benefit amount now goes from age 70 all the way till you pass. And keep in mind, you also get a inflation adjustment each year. So when we're looking at the power of delaying, careful planning must go in to understand where's your break-even age, what is the likelihood of you and your spouse making it to those break-even ages, and if so, does delaying give you more money over your lifetime? All right, so let's look at a case study. So Steve and Jennifer, Steve's an operations manager, and Jennifer is a media planner who works from the house, and you have a retirement savings of $1.1 million. Now, let's say they're 7 years away from retirement. They have $700,000 in their 401k that Steve was building up there at his work. Then they have $400,000 in their Roth IRAs that they've done. Let's say they've done Roth conversions throughout the years, or they've just been contributing to their Roth throughout time. And then you finally have your taxable brokerage accounts. So that has $300,000 in it. So overall, how do we feel about this couple? Well, overall, I'd say they're doing pretty good, right? Let's take a look at some things that can use some improvement. But overall, their financial picture looks pretty solid. So what's happening here is we want to look for areas that could be improved, things that maybe they're not thinking about. They mentioned that they're looking at inheritance and thinking about leaving it. So leaving a legacy is big for them. They're also concerned about their future tax situations. Given that they're 7 years away from retirement, that means they're going to have probably another 30 years in retirement. That's a very long time for them tax-wise. It's could be 40 years of taxes left. And especially when you get to retirement and they get out of that accumulation phase and into the distribution phase, when they're living off of their investments, that's precisely the time the IRS likes to jump in. So what's the plan forward for them? Well, first off, given above the age of 50, you can utilize catch-up contributions and max out that 401k. In this case, it was $26,000 a year that they can do that. Now, they can do some analysis, say how much do they need for their retirement savings. Analysis can be done on that. Let's say it's 1.5 million. So let's say they need 400,000. So they're at 1.1. They need to build up another 400,000. That's 57,000 annually. So now they have a target. Now they have a goal and a plan that they can start stacking away money for. Build that system. Build the automated savings to make sure that this plan is disciplined and executed. Next up, we'd look at Social Security. So let's say they look at their Social Security together and they say, okay, if we wait till age 70, we get 3,700. And if we only take, and if it's only 2,800, if we start taking withdrawals at full retirement age, let's say 66 and 10 months, and this will result in an extra $10,000, almost $11,000 in annual income. So the simple maneuver of delaying Social Security, in this case, added almost $11,000 in annual income for them. The caveat here is that we need to make sure that they're going to live until their break-even age and to reap all the benefits of delaying. Obviously, delaying would not make sense if they expect to live, just a few years into retirement, if health is deteriorating significantly or whatever is happening. So this is something that has to be taken with consideration of a specific plan and taken into account health considerations. So what's the outcome here? So now, let's say they get disciplined, they have that 57,000 years they're stocking away, they delay their Social Security. They've amped up their contributions now through 401k, and their other investments. Now, their accumulation this last 7 years before retirement is at full speed. Now, the option here, since they've been flexible and have a Roth and a taxable and a 401k, you have all three buckets. You have the taxable account, you have the tax deferred to the 401k, and you have the tax free, the Roth. Now, if anything comes up, they can take income from their brokerage account, or they could take it from their Roth, as long as they've met the 5-year rule. But any contributions as well from a Roth are able to come out right away. But they have options, and the taxable brokerage account is easy as well and less tax than the 401k. So flexibility, I'd give them a big A+ here, because now they have different levers they can pull. And finally, with delaying Social Security to age 70 and getting the extra benefits, almost $11,000 a year in Social Security, is going to help them not only in the middle of retirement, but also all the way at the end, when we're in the tail end of our plans. Having delayed that, in maxing out the benefits you can get from the government, considering they're expected to live long, let's say into their mid-90s, this strategy will have paid off quite a bit for them. All right. So I know I've ran through a bunch here, and we've hit on different topics in different areas that tax planning goes into. But when we look at tax planning, it all comes down to what phase are you in? Are you in the accumulation phase? And how far before you get into that retirement distribution phase? The quicker and the more we can build up our accumulation phase, the better we set ourselves up, obviously. But the things to consider, like your Social Security, like setting up different buckets, like your asset location, all of these things play factors into the tax planning and minimizing your tax exposure and lowering your tax bill over your lifetime, which is the key here. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed. And if there's any questions, please reach out. My team and I are in the chat. If you want to stay and ask some questions, please do. Otherwise, thank you for enjoying. Thank you for joining us. And I appreciate you. Have a great day. And hopefully we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.